let me share my screen again. All right, so WordPress news and events. Really the big thing that Peter and I wanted to spend a little bit of time on is giving a summary of some of the highlights from the State of the Word. So if you're not familiar with this, this is an annual talk given by Matt Mullenweg. I was kind of mispronounce his name. He was one of the the founders of WordPress. And usually, this is something I think it's typically given at the WordCamp US in the past. It used to be given in person, but it's more of a talk that he gives that talks a little bit about the past year, but also gives a vision for where WordPress is going. And there's a lot of interesting information in it. So if you get a chance, if you just go to WordPress.tv, go there. You can get a link to the video. You can rewatch it yourself. The video also has a lot of nice time markers on it too, so you can jump to a particular section that you're interested in. But what we thought we'd do for maybe about 10 minutes or so is give you a quick synopsis of the highlights of that talk. So I'm going to cover the first two slides, and I think Peter, you're going to cover the next two, and then we'll tag team the last one.
Mm-hmm.
So as I said, one of the highlights was just in terms of the roadmap. So when people, if you're new to WordPress, some of this stuff may sound a little bit odd to you, but even this name Gutenberg, what is that? And so prior to 2018, it was this kind of I guess a code name or project name for what really now is probably more commonly referred to as the block editor. And at that time, as I said, that was really our first meetup too, was back prior to Gutenberg launching. That was phase one of this long-term roadmap for WordPress. So phase one, which kind of started in 2018, and again, these phases, they don't have definite beginning and ending times, but that really, the first intention there was easier editing. So that was the introduction of the block editor. And for those of us, we'll talk about this a little bit later too, those of us who remember the first release of it, it's changed quite a bit, and for much for the better from when it first got released. So there's ongoing improvements with the block editor. So that was phase one. Phase two kind of started in 2019. So some of the first things we saw from this phase were things like block patterns, the block directory. It was kind of just taking blocks and putting them to other spots on the site. The widgets was probably a widget area was something most recently. I think that was in 5.8-ish, where you can use blocks to create your widgets. So the 5.9 is kind of where we are right now. So full site editing is part of this phase two, this idea of customization. So allowing people to customize their websites more easily, as opposed to in the past, you have to be a developer and know code and to be able to make changes of that level. So that's kind of where we are now. In addition, there are two more phases coming. So phase three, which is tentatively 2023, is I think what he was talking about, is collaboration. So if you've ever used WordPress with multiple people, it's a bit clunky. I mean, it was kind of built for blogging to begin with. So a lot of things in WordPress are around, an author, editor, those kind of roles. So there is some role management built into WordPress, but if you think about things like Google Docs and these other kinds of paradigms that are available now of more easily allowing people to collaborate on things, that sounds like that's going to be part of this next phase coming sometime in the future. So we'll see what that means. And then finally, phase four, which is kind of TBD, is multilingual. So even though WordPress core does have a lot of support for multiple languages, it's still something that if you really want to create a multilingual site, you still need plugins and other things you have to add on in order to do that. So that's a later phase. So just, this is, I think, a good thing for people to remember. Some of the changes we're seeing, they're not just random things that are being thrown out there in releases. They are part of this larger roadmap. One of the other highlights I thought was interesting, just from, again, somebody who's worked on websites using other technologies, is the growth of WordPress. So some of the statistics that they mentioned in the last, in the State of the Word, was around WordPress itself now is roughly 43% of the entire web. So you think about all websites, 43% of that roughly are using WordPress. The other thing around that is if you look at the other top tools and technologies, Shopify is the next biggest one behind WordPress, but its market share across all the web is still fairly tiny. It's had some growth, but it's still only 4% or so. And then the big ones who you generally see advertising quite a bit, on sports, teams and things, Wix and Squarespace, there's still a tiny fraction. There's still 1.9 to 1.8%. And then the one I thought was kind of interesting too is Joomla, which you don't hear too much about. It's at one point it seemed like it's very much a rival of WordPress. It seems like it's faded off quite a bit too. So, and then everything else is 33% of none. That doesn't mean that there's no technology. It just means it's probably more of a custom thing. It could be, .NET, it could be Java, et cetera, et cetera. It's more homegrown solutions. So again, when people talk about WordPress, is WordPress going away? Is WordPress, all these other, you see a lot of advertisement for these other competitors, but WordPress still has the lion's share, I would say, of the market. Peter, you want to talk about Learn.WordPress?
Yeah, so it was interesting when Matt Mullenweg brought up learn.wordpress.org, which is the online training site at wordpress.org. There's a lot of content there that is it's targeting a wide range of users, and because of that broad brush, you might have to look for some of the content. It's also really helpful for like meetup organizers, for example, because there's a lot of information in Learn that is presented for somebody who can then present it to somebody else. It's like a whole lesson plan kind of concept, and what you can get out of these courses, these lesson plans. Workshops are kind of about a specific thing and all, but it doesn't mean that not everyone can go there. And the goal is to get that many more people really strong and comfortable, build that WordPress base of users that are then further growing this open source tool that we use. So throwing the numbers out on the 186 learning spaces, 73 workshops, the lesson plans, courses, and courses are meant to be presented as a series of these lesson plans. And you would find all of that at on wordpress.org. It's where we have the learn.wordpress.org. If you want to, and I think at the end, what we'll do is when we start doing some of the live stuff and we get a chance to come back to it, can show you even where you can go in and find out where you can become a contributor. And Learn is a great place to do that, because you can learn while helping other people learn, for example. There's a lot of ways of contributing to the WordPress project. Something else that's really been ramped up as part of Learn is the WordPress social learning meetup group. And there's a lot of things that were mentioned earlier as people getting on the call that are focusing even on full site editing, kind of trying to stay with what's coming out. And Roxy, who was on this call, is done an amazing job of pulling this information together and presenting it online and all. And there's a number of other people who are working on this. It's a huge task by a relatively small number of people. It's on a global scale, and we could always use more presenters and developers and content developers and translators, and the list goes on and on. Editors and all. So maybe we'll spend more time on what Learn is in a future meetup, because it's really worthwhile. Ray, you kind of covered some of the things that were, in these phases. The two major WordPress versions this past year, 5.7, 5.8, had a lot to do with the whole editing experience and actually starting to introduce some of those things that are part of 5.9, the full site editing and all. And 5.9 was delayed, and it was delayed. A lot of people were really happy that it was delayed, because there was the community, the organization felt, and again, it's hard to sometimes describe the WordPress community, because it is wide, and being open source, a lot of volunteers doing this work, but there were a few issues that it was felt that it wasn't ready. We kind of talked about that. Wait till after the holidays, but now all of a sudden, 2022 looks like it could be a pretty interesting year with some of these releases coming up. Next slide there. So another thing that was discussed is really interesting, and I'd like to show it later on when we're doing demos, is Openverse, which is now the WordPress acquisition of the Creative Commons database that existed previously. and it's now part of WordPress.org. So WordPress.org/Openverse, which is a place where you can go get initially images, but there will be more and varying content going forward that you could go and grab and use on your site. With part of the goal is to have that be kind of a seamless way of connecting a WordPress site to this store of content. So it's pretty great that now all of a sudden we're going to have this growing library of free give some attribute to content out there. And in fact, there's another thing that's kind of bubbling just below and next to that, which is a whole photos database that'll be completely free. And I can kind of show you a little preview of that. So a lot of neat things to help content developers working as we're also looking at all these big changes.
And these were, I guess, more the vision things. So feel free to add on to this as well, Peter, too. So just like kind of the wrap up thing was, the vision of WordPress, and some of this isn't really new, but this idea of the decentralized web. So again, not to pick on, Squarespace and Wix, but one of the things I certainly have experienced with, working with clients who are on those platforms is just like Facebook, people learn that too. It's like, you don't own it, with Wix and Squarespace, it's slightly different, but, I've talked to business owners and clients who are like, oh, why do I need a website? I have everything on Facebook. Well, guess what happens to Facebook every now and then, or they have their own rules. So the idea of this is having individualized ownership, having the ability with WordPress, one of its core strengths is you can host it anywhere, participate from anywhere, fork it on your own if you're so brave enough to do something like that. So, and then 5 for the future. I don't know, Peter, maybe you want to cover this a little bit too.
Yeah, so 5 for the future is kind of an extension of the entire WordPress.org, make.wordpress.org contributor effort, where organizations, there's a request for organizations that are involved in the WordPress space, especially major ones, hosting companies and other large agencies and major plugin developers and all that. Really, their business is based on WordPress. It's like, well, okay, as a core, WordPress is open source, in quotes, free. So therefore, work to give back some of those resources. And there's a lot of people, Automatic being an organization where there are a lot of what are called automaticians, while they work for Automatic, are part of the 5 for the future, where that organization is giving time to employees to contribute. GoDaddy and just WP Engine, all kinds of organizations that are doing this. And there's the effort to continue that, to get people to be aware that what they should, if they contribute back to the project, we all win. So that's a really good thing. And there's a lot of ways that they contribute, whether it's hosting workshop, creating block themes, being part of Learn, developing course programs, things like that. So that's really important. And yeah, the return of more in-person WordCamps, that's a come and go kind of thing, because I know which one just got canceled, the Birmingham.
Okay,
yeah. And I think all of a sudden I'm drawing the blank whether
got canceled.
Which, yeah.
Do you know why?
COVID.
Oh my gosh, I know all those. Okay,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But the thing about, like we talked about before, it's unfortunate because it is nice to see everyone in person. Like I said, people here, we've had meetups in the past where we met in person pre-COVID times, but there is a benefit to virtual too. Again, we get to visit and go to attend more things than ever possibly could when it was in person. So
yeah,
I think it's a balance. I think you are going to see some, bigger ones or maybe some smaller groups start to do that maybe later in the year, start to have more in person. So
there was a very recent, like I think today, post out there about the latest, updated guidelines for in-person WordCamps and meetups. And it's a whole kind of even flow chart of whether, it has to do with, local regulations and can you control certain things and all. So it's just, hey, unfortunately, they did State of the Word in New York with a small group of people, and it ended up, people became infected. So, and they had all kinds of precautions put in place. So,
yeah,
yeah.
that happy note. But
Yeah.
I definitely, so this, we just did a quick summary. I would encourage people to check it out. It's at WordPress.tv. The other just, quick thing on it too is we didn't cover the beginning part of this, which is, Matt talking about the team, like Peter was saying, the people behind WordPress. So for me, I'm always interested in that stuff, like the number of new contributors and all that. It really is impressive for an open source, something that's so large but has such wide reach out there, just to kind of peek behind the curtain a little. So hopefully this was just, like I said, if you didn't have the time to watch it, it's very short. It's only like an hour or so, and I usually watch these things at 1.5 speed, so it's not that bad. All right, so let's get into the meat of tonight's topic, though, which is, this is what everyone's looking for, because it's, what does this mean? What does this mean to you? And I apologize, I usually try to keep it at this mode, slideshow mode, because we're gonna have to be sharing our screens later. Yeah. So again, what will WordPress 5.9 mean for you? Just real quick, here's our agenda. Peter and I will do some quick introductions of who we are if you're here for the first time. We're going to spend some time talking about a summary of 5.9, because there's quite a bit in it, and there's no way we can get into everything. So we'll spend around 15 minutes or so doing that. And then we're going to show a lot of hands-on stuff. So Peter's going to talk a lot about the block editor improvements. That's a significant part of 5.9. I'm going to do a real quick demo on the gallery block. That's changed quite a bit. Peter's going to show the block pattern explorer, do a demo of that. I'll spend some time on Fullsite editing. I said a simple demo. We'll see how simple it is by the time I'm done. And then final thoughts and Q&A. And again, just to remind folks, as we're doing our demos or talking, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. Put in the chat. We'll try to, between whoever's presenting, Peter and I will check the chat window as well. And we have a very educated group of participants here. I know we have a lot of people who help us monitor the chat and answer questions. So I appreciate everyone who does that for us. Again, real quick, who I am. I'm Ray, one of the co-organizers of the Hartford WordPress group. I've been in IT for 25 plus years. I was a software developer / software architect. Worked for some bigger companies, local / national companies. Been using, I could update this, probably now it's 5+ years using WordPress. Right now I'm self-employed. I have my own website design business. I live in Newington, Connecticut, married, no kids. We still have our one old crazy cat, and I'm a geek.
Hey, I'm Peter Ingersoll. I'm in South Windsor, Connecticut. Formerly, I grew up in Newington. I've been involved with sales and marketing and digital marketing for quite a while now. I've been working on my own for some amount of time that I, for some reason, can't seem to nail down because it varied a little bit. I'm self-taught in a whole lot of this stuff. I spend most of my energies either using WordPress or teaching WordPress or building things in WordPress. And I have 2 adult children, and I have 2 cats now, 2 young cats. So we are cat people, I guess, Ray and I.
That's right. All right, so let's get into the meat of this. So what's coming up in WordPress 5.9? So let's start with, and I think Peter and I will flip covering slides. So I'll do this first one. So first off, when's it coming? Tomorrow. Good news, coming tomorrow. If all goes well, and as far as I've heard, yes, it's still going to be the case. But again, for most people, it depends on your hosting too, whether some host will automatically upgrade to it or not. But in terms of your own sites, just like we say for any major release, don't upgrade your live sites immediately. That's just, good rule of thumb. Let people shake things out. If there's any issues or conflicts with plugins and all that, you want to find that out, not on your live site. If you have a staging site or a non-production site that you can test these things out on, always test it first on a staging test server first. And backup. So backup tonight too would be a good idea after this meeting. So you have a backup of 5.8. So, but again, all things look like it's going to be launched tomorrow.
One quick comment on backups.
Yep.
There are a number of people, when they talk about backups, make a point of saying make sure to test your backup. I know from recent personal experience, that's a really important thing to do.
Right. So I'll continue with this one, and Peter, I'll throw the next one over to you. So, what are some big things coming in 5.9? Full site editing. We'll talk. What does that mean? Block editor UI improvements, we'll go over a lot of those. Improvements of gallery block, that's what I'll be showing. A new theme, there's always a new theme every time a major release comes along. This 2022 theme, that's a tongue twister. And then there's a lot of under the cover stuff, like some performance enhancements, things that you won't necessarily see, but are making WordPress itself a little bit more stable and a little bit faster. Do you want to talk about this one, Peter?
I can, although I feel you have forced yourself to be more, but I'll talk about in terms of what is full site editing. Full site editing is the new direction that WordPress is going, where the use of templates and using your bullet points, it's the next phase on that Gutenberg roadmap, where introducing the block editor now, how the block editor is going to become a significant part of the full site editing of your site, where you can manage the headers, footers, the navigation menu, all those elements that were previously PHP templates, and going in and the coding and looking at that PHP code for the different elements that all get pulled together. And now there's a new way of managing a lot of the way the content gets pulled together and presented. It's the presentation of that content. And we're beginning to see new block themes being introduced that are all based on allowing for full site editing. That built into it is where you can go edit your various site parts, as they call them, the header, the footer, sidebar, your 404 page, and on and on. So yeah, in terms of, one of the things that's getting introduced, and you'll see, and we'll talk about, where there's overlap from some of the more mature or commercially available themes that have a lot of this built in, but things like, site-wide styles now being built into the full site editor, so now you can have a lot more control over when you place something, what's the color and the margins, things like that. Styles of blocks can be set for your theme. Now that's, what and maybe we'll find some time where we could just pull up quickly a number of block-based themes, and you can see that how that same content really can change for the whole block, because now the blocks themselves are being kind of fully controlled by the overall full site editing experience. And yeah, something that people are really worried about is what happens with my customizer. On a full site editing block-based theme, the customizer does go away, air quotes, for that. Menus and widgets and admin area are all managed differently. We'll talk about what will and won't happen with that, with your site, with our site, the variations.
I'll jump in again. So
yeah.
So, I think the question most people have, because again, all the news about 5.9, if you're into WordPress news, is full site editing, that's all you hear about. But, we said kind of bearing the lead of all the other stuff happening, because for most people, say the vast majority of people, what does full site editing mean to me? Nothing. We want to talk a little bit about why. Well, primarily it's the next bullet. Your theme, your WordPress theme needs to support full site editing. I think Peter will have a slide later where he talks about the different levels of what support means. But the vast majority, again, if you have a theme running today on your WordPress website, unless your theme is updating and taking advantage of it, most people are going to see no difference for full site editing. You're still going to do headers and footers and everything else the same way you did in the past. So and some modern themes, again, modern, whatever that means, like Cadence, the one that we've been using for all of our other projects, they already allow some sort of full site editing. Things like Cadence, the free version of Cadence lets you do things like easily, modify your header and footer, a lot of other themes.
Is it replacing what we're already using?
I'm sorry, say that again. I'm sorry, what was the question?
Oh, hi. Sorry, this is Ali. I'm late joining. Just was wondering about the perhaps necessity to upgrade to the new version, but if you're going to get to that later, that's fine.
Yeah, and I think we actually covered that earlier too. That we would say for people in terms of manually updating your live sites, don't. If your host may eventually update it to 5.9, but again, that's generally out of your control. So, but as I said, for most people though, your theme in terms of full site editing, now we're talking about, many modern themes already allow you to do some of these things that we'll show you in terms of what full site editing allows you to do. So you already have it for certain themes. So in some cases, like, well, what is full site editing giving me? And even older themes, a theme that may not have what's considered, all the ability to edit everything around the site, generally through the customizer or through your theme options, most themes will let you do things like change headers, change icons, things like that. So some of these ideas that are already around, it's not like full site editing is the first time that you're allowed to edit other parts of your site besides pages and posts. I'll continue on, Peter, if you don't mind. So what's the big deal? It's like, okay, it doesn't mean anything today. So what's all this hype about? Well, again, just we talked about like Gutenberg itself, in the beginning, it's like, what's the big deal? I've got page builders. From full site editing standpoint, what this is trying to do is standardize the editing experience. If you think about even not too long ago, inside of WordPress, just the user interface, the back end looks very different. So if you're doing things like, short codes look very different than, widgets look very different than, customizer. There are so many different things you have to kind of learn to basically do what full site editing is trying to consolidate into one standardized experience. That's really the thought behind it. And again, as I said, there's a lot of paid themes out there today that let you do this already, but by building this into WordPress core, just like with blocks too, again, their page builders were around well before blocks, but by building into WordPress core, now you can really benefit on the improvements that WordPress core will do in future releases, including stability, security, all those kind of things. So again, this is the more things that I think that they pull into core within reason, I think the better it'll be for people. If you want to switch themes, it won't be this huge learning curve like it is today. And again, trust me, going back to like 2018, when everyone saw Gutenberg for the first time, we're all like, ugh, what is this? It'll get better. The current experience with full site editing, which I'll show you with the demo a little bit later, it's clunky to put it, kindly. And if you're a beginner, you may never even want to do half the stuff that full site editing is letting you do. It still seems like it's something more of an intermediate user, at least right now. It may get simpler in the future. So Peter, do you want to cover this?
Yeah. So in trying to explain all of this, this overlap and where we are in all this talk about themes is, you can look at, there's basically four types. It's as kind of decided, there's four types of themes out there, and there's even overlap in here, but where we're going with 5.9 and forward is the block theme, or the block-based theme, a theme made for full site editing, using the HTML templates, theme JSON, which is something that if we get into a full site editing, we could talk about how that controls. It's where you manage all of your site with blocks. So that's kind of a lot of what we're talking about is now being available with the new release of 5.9. The universal theme is a theme that works with both the customizer and the site editor. And in reading, sometimes I've seen that kind of left out, because it basically means that it has elements of both. And in fact, we'll talk a little bit about the customizer later and what actually happens to it or doesn't happen to it, depending on a number of factors. But a theme that kind of happily works with both. But really what we'll probably see more of this idea of a hybrid theme, which is a classic theme that starts introducing full site editing elements into what they've got. And we talk about Cadence only because we've used that for a demo site, and we expect that existing themes like Cadence will go this way, and that's because they posted that on their blog, talking about what they are and aren't doing with full site editing. We could share that link later, but where they're saying, they're going to start introducing elements, so that would make them a hybrid theme. Or then there's the classic theme, what most of us are using right now, a theme built using the PHP templates, functions PHP. You've heard us talk about PHP, the language that WordPress is written in, and how these different files work together. But it does not use the full site editor. It's just it's the way before full site editing is what you'd call a classic theme.
And right now, as far as so that new 2022 theme is a block theme, but as far as I
Yeah.
know, like as of tomorrow or as of right now, there's really not that many block themes out in the repository, right? I think it's like a dozen or 20 or so. It's not.
It's 43 right now.
Okay, so but compared to how many hundreds of other classic themes out there, so. All right. This is yours again.
So yeah, once again, don't panic. If you're and this is about the customizer specifically, right? So if your current theme uses the customizer, nothing will change. There's a lot of fear that, oh, full site editing is with 5.9. 5.9 comes out, full site editing doesn't use the customizer, therefore I lose the customizer and everything I've done in it. It's not the case. If you are using a theme that uses the customizer today and you upgrade to 5.9 tomorrow or the end of next week or whenever, your customizer will continue to work. If you switch to a block theme completely, and then you go to a full site editing experience, the site editor replaces the customizer. If you switch to a block theme and use a plugin that requires the customer, both the site editor and the customizer will be enabled. So this is interesting. So if say you said, you know what, I'm going to experiment, I want to go use full site editing, I like where things are going, I want to use that, but I use this plugin like WooCommerce, for example, that has a lot of things that happen in the customizer. The customizer will be enabled for anything that needs to use the customizer. The customizer also just still exists that you can go to directly by going to your website, wp-admin customize.php. And then kind of as we mentioned that how some themes may convert to a hybrid theme and use both, so that they may have some elements that you handle in the full site editing, but there's still some customizer kinds of things there. Another thing that I don't think we put anywhere right now, because we could talk about it if people are interested, is then what does this also mean for page builders and things like that? And again, very similar. Yeah, there you go.
Good.
There you go. See?
So to answer Peter's question, is this the
Yes,
end of
is
premium?
there a problem?
Is this the end of premium themes and page builders? No. And I think you look at the example of Gutenberg. Gutenberg / the block editor was released in 2018. Elementor didn't go away. Divi didn't go away. Beaver Builder didn't go away. In fact, they've continued to improve over time. And again, if you think about this, it's these premium themes, because they can focus on that one task, they're able to offer you, at least, especially right now for full site editing, a much more robust, user-friendly experience. So again, I'm familiar obviously with Divi, but also Cadence. It's very far ahead of what you'll see in my quick demo later. Full site editing, you can do things with the premium themes like control, when templates display, you have a lot of conditionals, and just they're much more powerful than what you're getting in this first version of full site editing. And some of that's just, again, the commercial companies, they can innovate and deploy more rapidly. They don't have to, just if you think about WordPress 5.9, how many things they have to test it with, how many things that they have to make sure they don't break in WordPress core. Usually you're talking about like a theme where a page builder has a much smaller kind of code base or impact. If it breaks sites, it only breaks sites using that theme or page builder. So they can innovate more rapidly. And again, just back to, if you look at the block editor today, I think is finally to the point where I wish it had been 3 years ago, because today I think it's very powerful and gives some page builders a run for their money. But it took about 3 years to get there. And I think full site editing is probably gonna be the same. Any parting thoughts on that? And so we'll show, so I know if people have questions, it's probably better as we go into the demos, because then I think we'll have a little bit more context to hopefully answer your questions, because I'm certainly not an expert in full site editing. I'll show you a quick, simple example in the demo, but we'll get more hands-on into that.
I just think there's one thing worth mentioning, which is the way the editing experience works, and the one thing about why people will very often continue to prefer the page builder they're using, because again, some of these things are like, it's a decision to say, well, do I want to manage the header of my site in full site editing, or using the page builder that allows me, if you're using kind of that commercial tool. But it's even when you get into like the classic editor, for example, you're just in effect replacing the area that you're using to control the content your pages. So the classic plugin will last for another year unless somebody picks that plugin up. Page builders, they replace that editing experience, or the editor. Block editor is being, we're trying to change the language to just editor, the WordPress editor. So you have classic editor, the WordPress editor, and all. So it's just different ways of doing the same thing, and you can choose the one that's most comfortable for you.
So this first part was just a quick summary of everything in 5.9. So what we're going to spend the next part of this presentation on is let's start showing you some things. So Peter's going to start with the block editor improvement, and this is purposely first because we think this is probably the part that most people are going to take advantage of 5.9. So sorry, Peter, all yours.
Okay, yeah. So I just want to kind of talk about the continuous improvements, and I found that the improvements coming in 5.9, while not necessarily like, it's not going to totally change your experience. It's just a great improvement of the experience. The block inserter, being able to place blocks, the thing that was probably the most frustrating to people who first started using Gutenberg and going, I don't know what's going on. Things are expanding and contracting, and I don't know where I am. I don't know that. While there's been continuous improvement, I think 5.9 is the best implementation of how you insert blocks into your posts and pages in WordPress. So that's going to be a really nice reason to, decide that if you're using the block editor, that now this version is the one that's going to, I think, make you feel, okay, I feel things are really improving. Going along with that is the greatly improved list view and how much you can now manage in the list view. There were plugins that allowed some of this. Now it's part of core, and I think they actually, implement it in a nice, clean way, so you can manage your content using the list view. And there are other improvements, and it gets a little confusing because there's a lot of depending on, big in the WordPress environment. So depending on what theme you're using, your theme may already be trying to help you with some of this stuff, and Cadence is one of those themes that has certain things, or the Cadence plugin that we've used, where you get a little bit more control over some of the spacing and all, versus what now is going to be coming to your editor. So it's actually kind of a challenge to show those things. It's almost like, let's just show a comparison of where you might find it here or there, and know that these things are available. So we'll get into this, but on the block list view, this is where not only you can move your content that you've placed with the inserter, you can see what is, you can group things, so you can really manage all of your content and easily navigate. So this is just something we'll get right into the demo. I think I got one more slide that is the block inserter, which now I kind of reverse these, but the idea of what that interface is, and how you're going to place things, and not perfect yet, but it's so much better. So we're just going to go into a simple, we don't need to spend a lot of time on this, but a simple kind of comparison. So I will share my screen.
I'll do a time check-ish on you, Peter. So you're around 15-ish, let's say, minutes.
I'm going to take less time than I think you think.
All right.
How's that?
Perfect.
All right. So I've actually got 3 sites here, and there are our animal shelter site that we've been building, if you've been kind of following along. And I wanted to kind of take this from the example of, okay, you've got your own site and now you're going to 5.9, so you do it tomorrow, or sometime soon. And one thing we forgot to mention, one reason why you don't have to upgrade right away is that there are no, as far as I know, no major security updates. Sometimes those are the point updates and all, where it's like, oh, you really should upgrade, but they kind of put those in, like, that would be 5.9.1 or 5.9.1 will probably be fixes that people find in this, and then we'll see some, if there's any security patches or things like that. Once you upload, this is the screen that you will see, your WordPress, welcome. You're probably used to these when you upgrade. Full site editing is here. You'll see all of this, but these are kind of things we're going to be talking about. The better block controls, block patterns we'll talk about later, the list view. Ray's going to talk about the gallery block. So we're kind of covering the things that they're covering. So if we were to look at a page, and we can look at the home page that we have. I'm on now. This is just a copy of our site that I've updated to 5.9. So now you probably recognize this page. But here's one of the things that you see. See how I go in between these two blocks, and now my add block, I get this nice thick blue line, the plus sign, things didn't jump around. And now I could say, add something here. And maybe I'll just, for demos, I'm gonna just put something in from our media library. And there, I've just added that block between these two blocks just by mousing that area, and see if I wanted to add something right here. So this little interface here makes things pretty nice. Now, if you're inside blocks, and depending on themes, I found it's not going to be everywhere. It's going to be like, how come it's not here? Well, these are because some of these are block patterns. This is actually a query block, things like that. So again, it's not perfect, but depending on where and what, when you are doing things, it's really nice. I'm going to just remove that image. The other thing that's very nice is that there is when you go to insert, you'll be more consistent as to where you'll find the block inserter to the bottom right of the screen, depending on, even if you're in a group and all, you might see that. So now you're looking for things kind of in similar places. So that block inserter is a little bit more consistent. And I think the thing that is really nice is, again, things don't really jump around a lot. One of the things that's kind of interesting is if you're to add a WordPress core block, like a columns block, you can end up going in between and adding another column, kind of what people who are using page builders are kind of used to now. Managing columns a little while ago was kind of irritating, to say the least. Would you say, Ray? You know, where
Oh, yes.
and now it's much easier because of the way the inserter is really kind of telling you, where you are and what you're doing. When you go to the block inserter from the left here, and you want to insert blocks, the drag and drop now works better because it's using that same, well, where am I kind of thing. Again, if I wanted to, the easiest one is just bring an image, and if I drag and drop it over here, it's saying, oh, you want to put it there. There's your blue line where you're going to put it in there, and now I can go and put that image right there. So the drag and drop has really improved. It's just friendlier. So, in terms of the way the editing works, that's going to be kind of that first thing that you're going to find that's going to be friendlier to you and be much more comfortable on where and how you're managing content. When it gets into the specifics of what is being offered by 5.9, some of the blocks are going to have more function and capability. This is one of those areas where, depending on the theme and depending on different types of plugins you may have that may be overriding some of the things that are a part of core, may or may not give you some of these functions. But the ability to manage the line height, the letter case, and all, just by this is typography. What I found is kind of interesting is, in some cases you'll find that you will get on full site editing, and we can show that maybe, Ray, when you're showing some of your stuff, or I can show it a little bit later. I've got our site on a FSE version, full site editing, the 2022 theme, which is coming with 5.9, where you actually even get things like some of the margins and things like that. So start looking in your, when you have a block, start looking in your block options to see if you've got new functionality that's being added there. Again, your theme may override some of this.
Peter, can you just maybe just, and this might be
100%.
People may know this already, but just to show people real quick again, when you add a block, just help people remember what's the difference between a core block versus like something added by cadence. Yeah,
exactly. So whether you use the plus sign here or the plus sign here for adding a block, typically what happens is when your core blocks will be, they're often color coded, and organized. So your core blocks are typically black. I'm not saying that color is the best user interface, but that's one way of looking at it. The other thing is typically if you're adding plugins that give you different additional blocks, that they'll be organized that way. So for example, you can see here are my cadence blocks. They're blue. There's a lot more functionality to them because it's built into this plugin. We also added generate blocks, which again are 4 blocks clearly marked here, but that's kind of how you know. Same type of thing if you go to add something here and you go to browse all, it just opens up that window. Keep in mind too that when you're doing something like this, if you know that you are looking for a cover block, that you could just start typing and get things like that. There's a little, you actually just saw something that's a little funky that with Cadence that I found today, and I'll show it to you when we get into block patterns. But there are block patterns come up in when you're searching for blocks in your inserter. Unfortunately, with Cadence right now, the preview goes away. It's really a weird little bug. And I'll show that to you and show it with another theme to show, you know, kind of how block patterns work. But so that's really cool. But what I think is super powerful is if you go to these 3 lines here, and you probably are used to seeing this, but probably not with the power that's built into now. The list view has really become a great tool to use. You no longer, if you've used a plugin, I don't think you need the plugin anymore. This is showing you all the elements on your page. And as you highlight them and go, you can see it'll highlight, you know, those different things on your site. So here's columns, here's the image that I just added. These are all the elements, and same as if I click over here, it'll show me where everything shows up on this list view. This shows me everything. Now, what's nice is you can collapse these. Say you wanted to, you know, you've got a really long post, and I should probably be showing this on a post. I'll bring up a post. You can collapse these and start seeing all the elements of your page. What's very nice too. Let's open up a post. I'll show you the post. The one that we worked on, I think last time, because there was a lot of content, the advice on adopting kittens and cats. So if you're writing a blog post and we go to the editor, editing experience for pages and posts are similar, pretty much the same. If I go now to my list view, again, I can see all of my elements here, but there's some interesting things about this post. When we created it, we didn't group things a whole lot, and we can look at creating a group and how we can identify content in that group using this list view. If you notice, one of the first things you notice is that, okay, here's my heading, but I've got this phrase next to it that says, is a cat the best choice for you? And you see, when I go and it kind of highlights that, you see the blue outline of what I'm at. I should probably put that at the top, but you know, the heading is a cat the best choice? You can actually see the anchor text for this, and this can really show you where your you know, where your content is by the labels that you use, that can also be used as HTML anchors. So you wanted to link to a particular section. This is like the HTML anchor is also, you know, an ID for that section. And what's really nice in the list view is it brings those words over here. So you can say, okay, this is the heading that I've labeled. I've given the HTML anchor, you know, is a cat the best choice for you? And we might even want to change that, you know, cat best choice, for example. And you can see, oops, if I could, that's an interesting thing. Didn't like reverse. That could be my keyboard. But it also changes that anchor text right up here, which is great, which is awesome. But now I'm coming down here and I've written all my content. Now maybe I want to do something different where I want to move things around, but in an organized way. And I look at this and I say, okay, I've got a ready to adopt section. And when I look at it, I go, okay, I have paragraphs and headings and things like that. And if you recall, we can group things by highlighting and see if in the list view it also highlights on the left side in the list view that same section, and I can go and I can group those. And now what's nice is right there in the list view, I can see that I have this group that contains all of that content there. And that group, I probably want to give an anchor and call it, what is this section? This is ready to adopt. And the dashes are go in because slugs have to have, these IDs have to have dashes. And now I have this group called ready to adopt. Now that's really awesome. But what then gets kind of interesting is like, maybe, you know, I want to put that at the very bottom of the page, say, for example. Now I can come to this list view, I can click on this, and then I can drag it. You see there's a blue line there. And I can drag it all the way to the bottom. And now, did I do that? Of course, it didn't. Let's see. Did I put it in the wrong place? Paragraph. Oh, I probably went to the menu bar. Yeah. So now, well, isn't that curious? See, imperfect. Let me put it above this image, see if it moves.
Yeah.
It must not like the bottom of the page.
Yeah.
Interesting. These are the little things that, see, now I move that group above the image, ready to adopt cat, you know, your next, and then I use the image below that. And now if I wanted to put that image back up above, I could grab that and drag and drop it to above the group. There's my ready to adopt a cat. This is that group. And now the image is above. So you can, where this is really, to me, where this is one of the things that's really valuable about this is if you're a content developer, you can end up writing all of your content, just even free form, and then come back to sections and start grouping it and then saying, okay, now I want to move things around. But you could do everything instead of going, okay, let me grab, you know, not that you can't do this, and that's nice, so you don't lose any. If I grab this group, all right, so I'm on this heading, and then I go one layer up, and now I'm at that group, and see the editor now should, you know, there's a nice clear box around that content that you have. And now you can, you know, it's highlighting it here, and now you can click that move up and down arrow that we've had for a while and move that around. Works just as well. And hey, maybe in some cases better depending on, but that ability to be able to see what you're doing much better than we've been able to, I think is valuable. Now I will tell you again, what I found is depending on what theme you're using, there may be some issues because themes do affect the CSS, that display code on the editor, just like they do in the front end, and every once in a while. And I think these are some of the things that we will see worked out as time goes on, where the functionality between the themes and what's in core as new things are edited, are introduced, they're going to work themselves out. You know, this pull quote that I have, you know, don't view your cat through, I should be able to come over here to the list view and drag it up right to the, you know, right to the top below the section called with the summary. But you can see where now this, again, that list view combined with the ability to really, you know, see where you are on the inserter and put things where you want them. If I wanted to add a block, and I wanted to put in, you know, a table right here, you can see how nice that just says, okay, you're right here, you're right here, you're right. So much better than it was. And now you could, you know, drop in your table. So, you know, that's a quick view of how your editing experience will work. You can, in your list view, by the way, if you wanted to get rid of any particular thing, that image that we put there, again, it'll jump right to it if I don't want it. It can also have the 3 dots here, and I have control over here, just like I have here, and what to do with it. I want to remove that image and then it goes away. So a lot of control when you get used to how you group things, now you get a lot of power about how you can move these groups just really efficiently using that list view.
I think
Ray,
it's
anything?
changed a lot. Yeah, no, I was gonna say, I mean, it's funny, after doing these, playing with 5.9 the past week, I hate going back to the old list
Yeah.
view, because this one is more like, this is what it should have been from day one.
Exactly.
Because the old list view, if anyone's familiar with it now, to me, it's kind of like a view only outline. But you can't like manipulate things with it. It just drives me crazy. I'm like, I can't just drag things around. But yeah, I think this is huge. I think just that ability to see a large page and group things and all the things that you were showing, I think that's huge.
Yeah, exactly. This is what we're used to seeing now, where the list view is, all it does is kind of show you where you are, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
anything else, or has anybody experienced tried 5.9 yet and had either positive or negative feelings about that that editing experience?
People are waiting.
Something that hopefully looks good.
For this.
Yeah.
All
All right.
If you stop sharing, if you don't mind, I'll grab. All right, so let's go. Let me do my desktop real quick. This one will be real short. So this is the gallery block. So as we talked about, there are some. This is probably the biggest, maybe the only real block improvement in those core blocks that Peter was showing, like the ones that are gray built into WordPress. So today in 5.8, actually I'll show that here in current WordPress 5.8, there's this block called the gallery. And I'll just, if you haven't used it before, this is kind of what it looks like. You can add one of these anywhere in a page. You search for gallery. It's pretty basic, like very, very basic. But in a lot of cases, this is all you need. So let's say you have a blog post or a page and you just want to put a couple of pictures in there. The current gallery block, as I said, I won't add. If I look at the current one, it does let you do a couple of things to it. So as I said, when you first start a new one, you could either upload images. I've already created one in the past, but all you could really do at the most is kind of like, change the number of columns. I can make it 3, 4, etc. It gives you a couple of layout settings. But even in terms of linking, it was treating this as one big component or one module, if you will. So you could only create one link. So if I wanted this to go to one page and this to another page and this to another page, these images, you couldn't do that in the old gallery block. So what's changed in 5.9 is they basically, from what I read, it sounds like they've redesigned the gallery block almost from the ground up. So in 5.9, when you add a gallery, this is a site that's running 5.9, again, still called gallery. First, I'll select a couple images I put here already. Not that guy. This, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do 6 images. Create a new gallery. So first thing you do is you can put I think the old one might have worked like this too. So I can put a caption in here. I'll say cat 1. I won't do them all. I'll say whatever, cat 3, etc., etc. Insert them into the gallery. So right now it kind of looks the same. Like, what changed? Well, if you go to that list view, the first thing you'll see is all the images are now showing up individually. So what's the big deal about that? Well, now you can actually change the settings for an individual image. So for example, let's say I go to the first image here and I want to, I don't know, let's say I want to mess around with its border. So I'm going to add a little bit of a border radius on it. So I'm going to, instead of unlinking that, I'll put in a border radius of 50. So as you can see, it's cropped this off. And now I can click on this guy and say, all right, I'm going to change his border. I think this is the right radius, make him 50, etc. So I can start doing things like that. I can add a filter just to this one image. So I think if I go to, where's it, do tone, this got introduced in 5.8. I can add a filter just to that one image. And then again, back to my other example about links. Now I can say this image, if you click on it, it's going to link to, let's say it's going to link to a page. So I'm trying to think what pages I have here. Maybe it's sample. Yeah, the sample page, etc. So I'll apply that and update this. So you can see it's giving you a lot more individual control. And back to Peter's thing about showing the list view in general. If I want to move things around, so let's say on this bottom row, I want to swap these 2 images around. Now from the list view, I can just simply swap them around, as opposed to in the past, it was just it was kind of clunky and it was a hassle to do it that way. So again, I'm not sure how many people actually use the gallery module. I use it on occasion for sites. In the past, if you wanted to create a gallery, you'd have to, again, use a plugin or something like that. But if you want something, quick and simple, the gallery module, I think, works pretty well. And with these new improvements, I think it's definitely made it even more useful than it was before. Does anyone use the current gallery module in WordPress? Judith Ann's kind of nodding along. Yeah. It's good. Again,
Ray, we played with it, and a lot of our block-based sites are built on Cadence, and this was a happy thing that they added to individualize where you can link the pictures to. And like on your site, it probably would go to that cat's, come rescue me page.
Yeah.
So no, I think it's a great improvement.
And again, it still doesn't replace. If you actually look at it, you may have a theme, a premium theme or a page builder that has a better gallery block. Again, this isn't quite going there. Like the Cadence one, you could actually create masonry galleries, and some of them you could do sliders and all that. It's not there. It's not to that point. But for kind of a quick and dirty gallery, I think it's definitely improving, especially that ability now, as I said, to kind of treat each image as an individual thing and apply styles. That's the gist of it. So behind the scenes, under the covers, I know there's a lot of work done to it, but again, it's an improvement to that gallery block. All right, so that was a quick one. So Block Pattern Explorer, that's you again, Peter. Let me stop.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting about the block gallery, and there's improvement to the buttons block, and again, working similarly in that they're breaking things down into smaller components that work well together as a thing, but then you still have a level of granular control like you just did. So it's a nice way of approaching things, so that we're not caught into this is this all standalone kind of way something works for a gallery. It's sort of within the workings of the bigger goal, if you know what I mean. Anyway, all righty. So I'm going to take control. Yes.
Yep.
All right. Sounds good. And I need to show a slide.
Yeah, I forgot you had a slide with this.
No worries. Looks good. Looks okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, so we're talking about the Block Pattern Explorer. This, to me, and honestly to many that I hear, is going to be something that's going to have one of the greatest impacts in the near to long future, and here's why. We've seen this already. We've talked about it already, in that block patterns are a way of grouping a bunch of blocks together in a pre-designed layout, using them on your site. They're stored in such a place like reusable blocks, but different than a reusable block is you change the content in one, it changes in anywhere that you've used it. A block pattern says, okay, here are these blocks with a layout, and now you can manage and control that content. So they're a quick way of adding these pre-designed layouts. What's really improved is how we can now put them on our sites, that inserter. So that there's a new way of inserting block patterns. It's the same as the block inserter. It's just a tab on there. And there's a way of opening up to see things and preview much better. So with this growing library of block patterns, we can now insert those, find them in the block inserter, explore them through a pop-up modal instead of kind of going off to a site and copying and pasting, which we still can do. You modify them once we insert them. And the reason personally, I think it's the future of WordPress themes is I think what we're going to find is that themes are now, a lot of times people are going out, and I think to this day, they're still going out and they're seeing pictures with some sports photography, and they're going, oh, that's a sports theme. Well, in a lot of cases, it's only a sports theme because they put some sports photos on in their demo. But they label it that, people feel comfortable with it, that type of thing. Now, with full site editing, that's going to give you control over things, but more importantly, coupled with accompanying block pattern libraries that then fit an overall theme where now all of these things work together, I think is what we're going to start seeing, some great power in how themes are going to work going forward. So that's pretty exciting. It's not something we haven't seen in previous iterations. Cadence, especially if you're using the Cadence Pro version, I believe, but I think in the free, there are ways of doing site building, but now this is something that's landing in core. So let's take a look. I will show you the thing that caused me the problem in the first place, and then let's see. I'll have to show you this. This was a very interesting thing with Cadence, and I'll be very curious if anyone else also deals with this. So if I go to the inserter, the plus here or the plus here, but let's go to the plus in the top left corner, and now you're going to see a tab called Patterns. So when you click on Patterns and see how everything's shrinking down, that's the bug that I'm hitting in Cadence. Because what's really nice is you get a preview. And in fact, when I go to explore and see everything's shrinking down, yeah, it's pretty crazy. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to quickly go. I'm going to close this. I just wanted to show you what, and I'd be very curious if people do run across this, please let me know, because I want to let the folks at Cadence know. I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to go to Appearance Themes, and I'm going to change the theme to, let's change it to Blocksy, which is now, of course, our site on the front end, in case anybody's curious. Same content. Blocks are really nice because they will work. That's another reason. But we haven't gone into the customizer, and so now your fonts and things like that are different. The way headings works are different. So that's a function of the theme. So we just changed the theme. The reason I changed the theme is so that I can come back here. Let me refresh this page, reload it. Oh, I forgot that I had something here. Let me delete this using my list view. There's the buttons. We can show that a little bit later on if we have some time. So remove the buttons. So now if I go to the inserter, the plus sign, and I go to patterns, oh my goodness, let me see. Well, this worked before. I have another option to show you very nicely. I'll leave that in and let's just see. Maybe it's something I've got stuck here. So let's go to this. This is an setup with FSE and the 22 theme. We'll activate that. This is what you're going to show a little bit later, right, Ray?
Yep.
The 22 theme is the theme that comes with WordPress 5.9. It really starts pulling into pattern into its interface the patterns. Fear not, this will work for you for the most part. I think I have something cached too, because it didn't happen that second time. So it may be even something with my version of Chrome. The imperfect world. I know that we have some users who have specifically said that one of the things they want to learn is how not to worry about messing thing up, right, Sherry? And that things will happen that look like they're really weird. Don't panic. We should put the don't panic thing. This looks a little different because we're using the block theme, but again, we'll go to the inserter. I'll go to patterns. And now you see, this is what you should see, how the previews, but if you go now to the explore, I have this really nice pop-up that shows me, and it organizes your featured things, but say you're looking at, some buttons that you want to put in, columns and how they work. And then you can just click on this, and now it's part of the page, right? So what's really nice is the inserter, it's all built in, and with that explorer you get to see things, and these aren't just images. That's one of the reasons why that shrunk down, by the way. It wasn't an image that shrunk down, it's actually code in the preview. So that it gets really kind of interesting. You're actually seeing little small versions of this same thing coded, but you can start, and this is also what we're kind of showing with the 2022 theme. These bird patterns that we're showing, and when we explore everything, this is a great example of where the theme has its own included set of block patterns. So in your inserter, you have all of these block patterns ready to go that work together. And then if we were to go in, and we're not going to do this right now, this will be when things become even more mature, we'll go in and showing how when you change the style, this color green could change to a global color and things like that. But we could end up, pulling these elements together and putting things, near each other that work together. Now, again, this is just a placeholder. We can replace that image with whatever images that we may have. But that block pattern library gives us a lot of power in being able to pull things together right away. Now, if you load another theme, you might see the core, just the core basic themes. Let's see if we were to do that. Well, I can show that if you want. You'll basically see themes like this. Let me go to WordPress.org. By the way, if you ever go to WordPress.org, we now have a new menu up top where we get to see things like patterns is now there. It kind of was hidden before. Your Openverse link is here. So under patterns, you'll see a lot of these things can be brought into your site, and some of these that are on .org will also be in the default install 5.9 is those patterns that you can get. We'll probably spend a whole session on how to create block patterns and how to use them, how to pull them in. But what's also nice about block patterns is because it's a simple kind of code. If you notice on .org, when I go out there, if I copy that and come back to my site, my FSE site, FSE, this here, now I can come here and I can paste it, and it pastes in that block pattern. Mm-hmm. So when you find libraries of block patterns, you can really, especially if they're pre-designed to work together, now you're just stacking these different rows or groups of rows on top of each other to build your website out. And then you go in there and you change the images, you change the text, of course, and things like that. But having that built right into the inserter, making it easy to explore and find the block patterns that are available to you, and having ways that you can go and get other block patterns. I have a link that I can show if we've got time, 7:21. Let me show you just a second, get the right window open. It's Gutenberg Times. I'll get the link separate, but there are resources, and there's also, you can get packages that are just wireframe type packages that are literally just the Frost WordPress theme is an example of this, where it comes with block patterns. This is a theme. There is a premium version, but it's made to work with block patterns that are just black and white, but show you where you can place things, and then you can go change the text, put in your image. They'll all work together. They're based on very consistent theming. So when you see that being, showing up built into a theme where all of these elements will work together cleanly, all of a sudden, building websites is going to be just that much more easy about kind of pulling the elements together that you need. Ray, have you had any experience with the block patterns?
I've only started playing with it a little bit. I mean, I think we talked about this in 5.8. I mean, I think it's going to be exciting in terms of, like you said, I mean, because most of us, if you create enough websites over time, that's the way we tend to think, is in terms of sections and then reuse of, how many times you need to recreate that 3-column section from scratch. You just basically want to just copy it if you can and cookie cutter paste it in. So I think what's going to be interesting about the repository, the block pattern directory on WordPress.org, is the curation of those, because over time, just like themes and plugins, things start to get, just like the garden analogy, you start to get a bunch of weeds in there. Like there's probably 50 patterns that are basically doing the same thing. So who's going to, what's the best one, et cetera, et cetera. But right. I think it's, like I said, it's a future. I mean, I use that a lot in Cadence, where Cadence, the free version, you drop a row in there and it gives you a couple of examples of templates and layouts. But having a a richer, or having an ability to, like I said, purchase wireframe packages and things like that, I think is great.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, where now what we could see is Cadence will say, well, instead of having our own separate thing, we'll just take these and put them in the block patterns so they work in the inserter. So it's even, that much more smooth. The link I was looking for before is Gutenberg Times, a great site if you really want to stay on top of what's happening with the block editor. And there is a page called, and we'll put the link, WordPress block patterns resource list. And in there, there's a link to the pattern directory in WordPress.org. Other directories include, these, like Share a Block is a really interesting effort where you can create your own block, share it here, and other people can go and just, download that code. If I want this and download it. Oh, you got to give my email address, but it's free out there. It's a community for sharing, and there'll be more and more resources for things like this. The Gutenberg Hub has block patterns. So once you start seeing how these things are going to work together and how it's going to be just part of WordPress, it'll be really nice.
Cool.
All right, what do we got next?
Hand it over to me if you don't mind.
You got it.
Stuff, sure. So I'm kind of bearing the lead. Everyone's like, all right, well, what about full site editing? Well,
Yeah, right.
we're
I
finally
get to
getting
sit back
to it.
and learn.
Trust me, here
Yeah.
comes full site editing. So, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show full site editing, but like I said, I'm going to try to show like a simple example of it, and then talk a little bit about, as I'm going through it, I think you'll see some of the things that apply across full site editing in general. So I have a site, again, kind of a freshly loaded site here. So I'm going to move my Zoom window a little bit. And so this site right now, if you look at it, this is just basically, this is using the WordPress, it's using, sorry, let me go back. The theme, it's using the 2022 theme. And it's pretty nice looking themes, as Peter said. If you look at it by default, it is a lot of stuff with birds, et cetera, et cetera. So this is what it looks like on a plain install. I just have, here's my site name, here's a navigation menu, and this is my first page, and then there's my footer. So when we talk about full site editing, one of the first things that you'll notice is we'd mentioned earlier, or Peter went into in some depth, on the admin side of things, one thing that's conspicuous by its absence is the customizer, where the customizer is gone. So before you panic, where did it go? Well, there's this new thing called the editor. So when you click on the editor is basically, this is what launches you into the world of full site editing. So I'll step you through some of those pieces first, then we'll go and edit this header. One of the things I learned quickly, again, because I like having that list view as well, is if you click on this toggle navigation, it gives you this list view, which in some ways I think is easier to follow where you are. Because by default, let me close that back up again. I think if I toggle it, by default, it throws you into this mode, which is kind of edit everything mode, is the way I would describe it. And just to show you what I mean, if you go to the regular block list view, on this page right now, when I'm thrown into full site editing, let me make my window a little bit bigger. I basically can edit everything. I mean, as the name implies, I can edit the full site, meaning right now, I can edit the header, I can edit this as page content, I can edit my footer all together through this list view. So that's one way, in theory, you can do full site editing, is just open up a page and you can edit it all right at that point. Me personally, and again, as somebody who's built quite a few websites, that's overwhelming. Like, what am I editing? I like to have things a little bit more, compartmentalized a bit. So if you're like me, what you can do is, instead of going through the list view, you can go back to that, go back to this dashboard view. So each of these pieces really, again, what full site editing is letting you do is edit get what are called templates. I mean, this goes back to the beginnings of WordPress, where WordPress itself, your content, your pages are still being displayed or really being shown to users through templates. In general, your theme has controlled that. So your theme has templates. WordPress has this whole idea we've covered in the past about a template hierarchy of, depending what page you're looking at, which template gets applied. all that stuff used to be hidden to you unless you were a developer. You could go into, you know, PHP files and change things. What this full site editing is trying to do is expose those templates to you. So if I click on, let's say, just templates right now, this is showing for this particular theme, here's all the templates. What's kind of neat, it tells you, you know, who added this template. Right now, they're all added from my theme. So there's a 404 page theme. I'll show you that a little bit in a second. You know, a single post, a single page, the home screen, et cetera, et cetera. There's all these existing templates that come with my theme, because that's basically the majority of what a theme is templates and styling. But let's stick in another way. I'm sorry. Another thing we could do is some of these are, think of them as larger templates. They're a template for an entire page, an entire post. But there's the idea of a template part. You know, I don't know what differentiates them, but think of a template part as something smaller, which can be reused even within other templates. So this is like probably as granular as you can get. So you can create something as small as a template part. So a header in this example is a template part. So personally, as I said, when you first get into this, you can edit a header back through that first screen I showed you, where, you know, you can edit all parts of the page, or you can edit it through here. So I'm going to, just for the sake of making our lives easier, I'm going to edit the header this way. So I clicked on that template part, which is the header. And this is where things start to look interesting. So again, full site editing, what is it? In essence, it's using the block editor to edit templates. And that sounds a little meta, not Facebook meta, but a little like, what the heck does that mean? What it means is all of these parts of my header are really blocks. So for example, this thing, site logo, is a block. It's a new theme level block. And I think some of these got introduced in 5.8. So if I want to change my site logo, for example, I just click on this block and say, all right, I want to add a site logo. I'm reusing our animal shelter one, and my button is hidden by my zoom. Sorry, I'm gonna move the zoom window over here. Okay. So now when I've added, oh, I get way too many zoom windows. Okay, now I've added my logo. So what can I do with that? I can say, all right, let me change the width of it. It's too small. I can start to do things like make it a little bit bigger, you know, manipulate it. I can make it by default, it's linking to my home page. I can use it as my site icon. I can use something else as my site icon. But basically, these are properties of this block. So right now, I'm going to show you this like piece by piece as I'm changing it. And again, I'll speed up as we get through a couple of these. But now that I've saved it, if I go back to this home page and I refresh, there we go. We've got our logos. That's the first thing. If you think about in the past, in the customizer world, this is something you would do through the customizer. So in general, your customizer would have a spot in there for, was it site identity, I think is what it was called. And that's where you could put your logo, you put your favicon, all those kind of things. Now, without a customizer, again, I know it's not gone, but you know, these are all really blocks. So the site title, I can do the same thing. I can either double click on this and say, my new site, if I could spell. I can add that there. Let's say I want something else in here. So after site title, let's say I want a button. I can add a button. So I'm gonna add a single button in here, and we'll say, I don't know, contact. You know, so it's a contact button, and I can have it linked to. Let's pretend I had a contact page. I don't really have one right now. And so if I save this, yeah, save. So now here's what my header is starting to look like. So now I've got a contact button. So you can think about all the things you could add. You can basically add anything. I could add another image block. I can add a social icons block, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm using the block editor to edit the header. So far, so good. So far, I like that, because if you've used Cadence, or you know, Cadence has its own method of editing a header. This is very familiar to that. You can drag pieces just like you did in Cadence. So far, I'm cool with it. Where I start to lose, my love for this is, let me go back to the list view again. Sorry, back over here. Let's start with the navigation. So this to me is I'd say where things start to go rotten a little bit. So navigation now is a block. So if you think about what is navigation, navigation is typically your menu, right? So in the old WordPress world, it might not be apparent. I'm actually going to get out of this so you can see it. If I go back to the dashboard, sorry, let me save this. Oh, cancel. Sorry, 1 second. In the old WordPress admin dashboard, you would have a place for your menus, right? Everyone's pretty much used to that since, I don't know when menus appeared, but there's no menus here. Where do my menus go? Well, menus are now a block. It sounds good, sort of, except when this is, I went back to, I think, the first slide about things being a bit clunky. So I'm going to edit my header. So I'm jumping around a little bit here, but now if I want to, let's say I want to change the navigation. So instead of all these pages, I just want to have, I don't know, maybe my home page or another page in here. So changing things, first off, let me delete this to begin with. Let me remove that page list. And now I want to add some pages in here. So the experience is a little bit weird. So I can either select an existing menu, in which case this is a brand new site, so I haven't created a menu, or I can create one from scratch. So I'm going to start empty, let's say, and now I can start adding things into it. You can hear me like struggling. So, okay, I'm gonna add my gallery page, which I showed you, my gallery demo. So there's a link. I can change the title on it, I think, by editing it. So now it's showing in, just like you kind of did with the gallery block, every link I add to this navigation is now going to show up underneath this. So let's say I want to add a custom link. How do I do that? I can say custom link. Oops. Custom link. And I'm just going to hit. See, what's funny here, it almost wants to create a draft page for me. I don't want to create a draft page. I just want to create a custom link that links to whatever. I can submit this, but then I've got to change it. So, so right now this is linking to nothing. I need to go in here and say, I want to get rid of remove the hyperlink here. And now so things are getting weird. And let's say, in the past, if you remember the menu, again, the old menu interface wasn't perfect, but you can drag menu items underneath each other to create sub menus and subheadings. As far as I can tell from all my, vast testing this right now, is the only way to do that is I would have to create a submenu. Let me go back to this guy. I can create a submenu this way. So I'm going to add a submenu underneath gallery menu, and let's call this, I'll use my sample page here, and then I could do another page, and let me save. So I'll show you what this is starting to look like on the front end. Now here's my menu. So I've got gallery demo. Oh, and it has 2 sub pages. But how do I move these around? How do I move? Let's say I wanted another page under sample page. I don't know. So anyway, so part of this may be my own ignorance, but I'm getting to, hopefully you're seeing the point of, to me, this does not feel very intuitive. Like I can't just drag this like I used to drag it a level under and move things around. So navigation, to me, at least the navigation links, doesn't feel great. And if you think about the old way you could do it, I could create my menus and have them appear in different places. So far, I don't see a place where you can have that. Let's say I want a mobile menu and I want a menu for, I don't know, a certain one page or a footer menu. I think you have to create those as either reusable blocks and then change them around that way. So it's a little clunky, at least as far as that goes. So, all right, so that's headers. Again, I'm not going to create an entire header, but you're getting an idea, I think, hopefully, of the full site editing experience. This will be the same thing for footers if you try to change them. But yeah, to me, menus is really a big loss. Just that fact of being able to easily move things around. But I mean, the other things aren't bad in terms of being able to add blocks there. For some reason, I'm not exactly sure why the one by default had it all as like a single row. I don't know if you could add multiple rows. Maybe I can underneath this. So let's see if I can add another row underneath it. So can I make a double row menu? I guess not. So again, you think about Cadence. Cadence has the ability to create like 3 rows. Maybe over your top row would be like a banner or something. I don't see a way to be able to do that in here. So again, let me go back to, I don't want to totally trash. So I think
No. And I think, you know, I'm seeing some comments. Roxy's chimed in, and a few others, that, you know, again, the experience is meant to be more like you would go in a list view and you would drag and drop, or you'd move things, you know, so with the goal being that it's the same, ultimately the same user experience as other things that are like it, like, you know, the
Right.
button. So, oh, you want to move something up, you take it, you move it up, or you put another sub menu, and then you can kind of drag and drop them. I haven't used it enough to know, and I think it's important to say here, the navigation block is brand new. I believe. I think it was one of the things. And the other thing again is that for our users, and we'll come back to this a couple more times before in the next 20 minutes, about this is more FYI what's coming, what, you know, the types of things that we're looking at, type of thing. You're not going to have to worry about this unless you decided you wanted to build a full site editing site tomorrow.
Right. Or your theme. I mean, the key thing is your theme has to support.
And
yeah,
exactly. Your theme has to support it. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, you know, that idea of, you know, how would you do like the other row? Well, I mean, the way you should be able to do it is to go in and add another row. I mean, and add another container and then put things in it, because the block editor is the block editor.
The navigation menu, you're right. Maybe it's just the fact this whole block navigation menu is a fairly new block, because to me it's a different block than other blocks. So it's almost like what you see with the query loop, which I don't know if I have that to show on the front page. It's a block made up of a bunch of different things, and they all have to kind of work together. So it's not like an image block or like a text block or something. It's a complicated block. As you can see, it has this, and it's got sub things underneath it. It's basically a group of individual blocks in a sense. So again, I'm willing to see what this looks like over time. To me personally, I'm just a little bit concerned that such a fundamental piece of the website, like menus and navigation, to me doesn't feel all that great compared to what the old experience was. The old experience wasn't all that great, but at least it was something a little bit more familiar. So what I will show, just for the sake of time, is let me show you just real quickly a template. So I don't know if I've created one already. I think I did. So I'll show you a 404 page. So again, most people probably won't be creating full page templates necessarily. As beginners may not necessarily do that. But what a template is, let's say, so 404 page is if you type in a URL that doesn't exist, normally you hit enter on a site. Maybe I'll show on our site. Sorry. So back to our build site, I believe this. I don't know if we have a 404 page on the site or not. I'll find out. So let's say I just type in some gibberish. You know, it says, oops, page not found. So usually your template, your theme controls this, what displays here. You know, different themes will show different things. But what if I want to control this myself? In my case of this site, I think I may have created one already just to say, oh, I want it to be a cute cat rolling on his back. So, nice. So how did I do this? If I go back to, again, in this editor, if I go to templates and I go to the 404 page template, this is where you do it. So I was able to replace the one that came with it. And I'm able to like add my own image. I can add my own text, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, where you would use these template parts, as I said, if you look at the list that's available through this theme, I can create one for my post. Again, people are bloggers. Maybe you want to create your blog post so that your featured image, you want to control where that featured image is placed. It's not on the top, it's on the bottom or whatever. That's really, I think, the types of templates you would most likely want to go in and edit yourself. Those key pieces, though, the header and footer, like I said, I think it still needs to evolve a bit, at least I think in terms of the blocks that you're using to build them. And one thing I'll show just real quick too, for the sake of time, is back to what Peter said about right now, that ability to coexist between customizer and not. I think, where did I have it on one of these sites? Do I have it on here? Oh, it's my test. Sorry. Demo. certain plugins will require you, this is another one I was messing around with today, certain plugins will require the customizer. So in this case, I have another demo site set up where it has the events calendar. So as you can see right now, there's just an editor, but as soon as I activate the events calendar, it's gonna give me a nasty warning saying, well, it did when I first installed it, saying this thing's not ready for WordPress 5.9. But once I do that, now I've got the customizer back.
Right.
So they can coexist in certain cases. I don't have experience. Oh, one other thing, and I don't know if you saw this as well too, Peter, that I don't know where this is, but to me, so the customizers where I typically would put my additional CSS, I don't know where you put that now in full site editing. I don't, maybe it's a 2022 theme doesn't have a place for that, or you have to go back to child themes again.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on it because I have not used, I'll admit to not using full site editing fully.
Yeah, and just to show people what I mean. So this piece is, let's say you want to add some CSS to your website. You don't want to create a child theme, but you want it just to be across a couple pages or not.
Yeah.
On the full site, in the real full site editing world, I don't see a place to put that. And maybe it's just the 2022 theme that doesn't have a place for it. So that's a bit of unresolved stuff. So again, I'm not bashing on full site editing. I think it's early stages of it. I think it could be useful in some places, but me personally, I think the user experience, it's not up to snuff at this point.
So Ray, real quick, where you are right now?
Yep.
Does this has no custom? This is a different site than where you just showed the two working together, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
What if you went to? I'm just curious. Would you see? I've not tried this. The additional CSS if you went to customize.php, WP admin.
Probably, yeah. So if I bring up the hidden customizer, I probably can see it there. Yeah.
Is it
but
in
again,
there?
Most people, you're right, from a user experience.
Yeah, no. I'm not saying it's the right way to do it. I'm just curious because
I was looking for it in other like
thing that is being worked on, but right now the way to add custom CSS would be in the style.css file.
Yeah,
it is planned for future releases, just not 5.9.
Right.
Yeah. So one thing again that's important, and maybe this is our segue. Are you all set? I don't want to.
Yeah. Let me. Oh, I'm sorry. I want to share just that final slide. So this is our thoughts, and So I think we're. Oops, not you. Back to final thoughts.
Yeah. There we go.
And I don't even need a slide for this. Sorry.
Yeah. So one of the things that's really important is the lessons that were learned when the Gutenberg plugin became the block editor in 5.0, and that whole process and how it ruffled a lot of feathers to say the least. So one of the big important lessons learned was, first of all, and this is something. Again, we should do a whole thing on contributing and all, but helping out with the testing of all of these things and in your sites and all is vital to make sure things are going to work. But that with full site editing, releasing it the way it is, which is basically you have to work hard to go and get it, as opposed to, oh, now you're a full site editor. You know, it's going to get developers, theme developers, looking at it, working at it within kind of the real world, because it is, it's not a, alpha beta version of WordPress. It's in WordPress, but as it develops, without it negatively impacting all the sites that are live and acting now. And people are like, wait a minute, my editor changed and what's going on? And my customers are complaining and things like that. So there were a lot of lessons learned about making it available, being very transparent about the entire process, trying to engage as many people as would be engaged to contribute, to see it in action, to see how what the impact is, and still on release saying, and now if you want to actually work with it, you have to go get it. You have to install a full site, a block theme to do full site editing, or there are ways of turning it on in code and things like that. But it's not like all of a sudden, oh, everything just changed on my site. So that's where our don't panic symbol continues to be. Because I still hear on podcasts and on other things and, the different meetups, and people are asking, well, is my customizer going to go away? No, it's not. It's not going to, it's not going to go away. It's only a good thing for.
I think, like I said, parting thoughts around this is for most people, tomorrow 5.9 won't be the end of the world.
No.
I think that's why we deliberately covered all the other parts around the block editor improvements, kind of the new blocks and all that, because I think for most people, those are going to be some great improvements that you can start using immediately. I think full site editing is something that it's good to be aware of, unless you're switching over to a theme that's completely, either a fully block enabled or a hybrid. I think most themes are going to probably dip their toes into that slowly. Like Peter was mentioning cadence. Well, we sent out one of the releases. I'm sorry, we sent out the resources later. There's a link to from the cadence blog where they talk about some of their concerns and where their roadmap is with full site editing. So people are using Elementor or Divi, other page builders / themes. I think they're all going to tread kind of carefully into that because they need to figure out what are these core elements of full site editing going to do with what they've already delivered and how the two are going to coexist. So I think it's going to be some time until most people even really get a real hands-on experience with it. So,
yeah.
Any questions people have around 5.9 in general? Anything we covered today or the state of the word? Where WordPress is going? It's like the State of the Union. The state of the word is strong, I think. I mean, some of this, all joking aside, is again, if you've used other environments, I know they talked about, like I've used Squarespace, I don't really use Wix too much. They are still trying to catch up with those, or not catch up, I'd say remain on level ground with some of those tools, because some of these things about dragging and dropping and making things easy for beginners, those have been around in those platforms for quite a while. So I think the UI improvements in the block editor are definitely pushing things forward in a good way for WordPress.
There's a lot of good stuff you showed us tonight. It was interesting. It was fun. I hadn't seen some of it before, but boy, that header thing just was like, whoa, down. I couldn't figure out from I know it was quick, but I couldn't figure out, like, what if I want my navigation on the right? What if I want it on the left? What if I want, and then you put in that custom link. What's that doing all the way on the right? Why isn't that part of the menu? So that was, I'm concerned, but I'm sure they'll get better.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think at least the way maybe the UI is set up right now, where they first dump you into this I can edit everything at once experience, to me is overwhelming, I think, for most people. I like you said, I also didn't get enough time to play around with where do my widgets go to, and where's my side, like I said, how do I build the sidebar? Well, I mean, I know it's a widget, so but where did that go to as well? So I'm hoping we talked about these other releases coming out in the rest of the year. Hopefully the feedback from the early adopters will go back into that. And I would be surprised if what we see, just like with Gutenberg, block editor now, if what we see in another year or so, I think it's going to look quite different than what it looks like right now.
Yeah. Most are saying that this is, the first big step into what's going to be coming over the next even couple of years, right? Yeah. So, we get to take advantage of things like the availability of block patterns as part of a new approach to theming, and I think that's going to be, I think that's going to be a very, very positive impact to a greater, number of people when we start seeing, wireframe types of things available where people can say, oh, I can build all of this stuff and just put in my content. That's going to make folks a lot happier. It's just right now trying to get theme developers to actually do stuff with full site editing means talking about it a lot and getting it out there, in a format that works, but it's not going to be intuitive to the vast majority of users, people in our meetups, things like that.
Well, and the other, it's funny, the other headline that they kind of buried was the Openverse thing, having that integrated into pulling in images, because that's something everyone struggles with. It's like, I'm throwing a site together, I need a cat image, like our pet shelter site. Where am I going to find a cat image? Let me go here. Again, you don't want to rip anybody off by grabbing it. Steve's here, our photographer friend. Like, you don't want to rip off any photographers. You want to make sure that you get a public domain image. They're hard to find sometimes. And I like the fact that I think the Openverse, the website thing, is still a little confusing about all the different license types you can have, but I'm hoping eventually that becomes simpler, where people can like pull in an image, do a search, and then drop it into WordPress, and there you have a starting point for something.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
there's Openverse, and so when you go to Openverse, and if you wanted that kitten photo, and there's all the kitten photos, and then you have to look to see if what the attributes are, but it is this massive library. It was acquired, it was an existing tool. The other one that I wanted to show, it's a little bit early.
Can you go back to, I'm sorry, just for a second. So what confuses me just on this one, I think once you click on an image, I get it, but that whole thing on the right, the license or public domain, all those little, what the heck?
Yeah, so right. So of course it's off screen. That's interesting. So there are certain things like I think CCOs you could just use without worrying about it. So if you wanted to say which ones can I use without attribution, so it's knowing what these are. That's what all the question marks are that say, okay, you must credit the creator, you can't change the content, and so on. These are all variations of Creative Commons licensing, where somebody puts something out there and says, okay, that's interesting, we gotta let them know. You must credit the creator. There's some that are like, you can't use it for commercial purposes. You must credit the creator. You can't crop the photo, and then the ones that are real nice where you like, hey, do whatever you want. Don't even tell us. But that's all part of the Creative Commons kind of licensing. The photos one, which is kind of right, you're a bit early to the party. It's being talked about out there. I don't feel bad about it, but it's not fully launched. But this is going to be a place where we can all submit photos and share, and it's just part of the the WordPress community. And go grab a photo of a chicken being hatched. Apparently, I pulled up no pictures of people. There'll be all kinds of rules, but this is the beginnings of just this yet another place that will be where we can get photos that, and I think the goal here, these are ones where no attribution will be required at all. It'll be kind of its own thing. But yeah, making content available to us is a nice thing.
Because like I said, I mean, the two big things are kind of layouts, and then what do I put in that layout? So the images and structure of patterns. To me, I think that's the huge thing.
Yep. There's a lot of content.
I know we have a couple more minutes left. So again, for just a reminder for folks, so we will send out a recording. If you missed anything or want to share it with someone else, you want to go back and watch me fumble through editing the header, feel free to. So we'll send that out. We have some resource links as well too in our slides. We'll let people know some of those resource links, and let us know when we meet again, either next month or definitely in our Facebook group, as you start to have your sites update to WordPress 5.9. Let us know how it's going, and if you run into any issues during the updates, we'd love to hear. I think that's something where we have a pretty good support group, and people can help you hopefully troubleshoot anything you run into.
I could add something on that.
Sure.
I have a development server with about 15 websites on it. All my clients, I just duplicate them on there. None of them use block themes. Some are simple, some are as complicated as an LMS with e-commerce. And I started out upgrading every one of them to release candidate 2, 5.9, and I've done nightlies every time. And no site has anything broken on it.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. I've heard of no major issues with existing sites, which
the good thing, I know, like the last major, I'd say about the last, as far as I know, this release doesn't do anything like some of the other releases where, like, getting rid of the jQuery libraries or, PHP, things like that. So you're right. It's hopefully it's just within core itself. So you're right. Most plugins and themes, I think, should be fine. But that's good to know. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it may be things like that weird thing, and I've got to look into, where the cadence and the block pattern inserter didn't play nicely together. I also wonder, now that I'm thinking about it, I probably have something on the server cache that probably, didn't
That's
help.
right, yeah.
All
right.
Cache.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us again. Like I said,
Yeah.
hopefully we've eased your fears of 5.9, and hope to see you
Don't
all
panic.
again next month at our next meetup.
Yeah.
So take care, everyone. Have a good night. See ya.
Good night.
Bye.